Hello everyone, and welcome to this RGB RPG's DM prep guide for Candlekeep Mysteries. Of course, this will have lots of spoilers in it, so if you plan on being a player in this game, I definitely recommend clicking away from this video as soon as you can. But if you're a DM who wants to get a little bit of an insight into my DM process and my prep that I'm doing for these games, stick around, it's going to be great. This is going to be the first session in a brand new campaign that I'm doing for Candlekeep Mysteries. I'm going to be tying together all 15, because we're starting at level 2, 15 adventures that come in the book, and we're going to be tying them all together into a continuing campaign for these 6 players that you can see their tokens up here on the screen. So, the first thing that I always do when I'm starting off a new campaign is to start off with a full introduction. A few paragraphs, a bit of a lore background on what's going on, just a good 5 or 6 minutes of basically just exposition for the campaign. And then we dive right in. So I showed you guys the reference document that I use for all of my DM games, and we're going to see it being actually used here. So this is it right here. And we start off with our checklist there that has the list of the things that we want to make sure that we're spending a little bit of time on for every single game. The characters, these are the ones that actually gave me backstories and background information right off the start. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's not totally necessary. A lot of players want to grow into their characters and really play with them a couple sessions before they really feel out who that character is. That's totally fine. These will be filled in as we go, but as you can see, we have a few that are already kind of a little bit started off already. So with this session introduction, we're going to start off with the introduction to the campaign, that exposition dump that I was basically telling you about earlier. And then we'll go into the party in their private office. We'll get into how they got that private office in a minute. But the first adventure that we're going to be running for this campaign is Mazfrot's Mighty Digressions. And this has the players trying to track down the culprits behind several fake books that found their way into the library, and fake books that actually turned out to animate and attack people. The creature that these books were is called a Gingwatsit. It's basically an ectoplasmic entity that can drain the life away from its targets, from its prey. The characters aren't going to know that whoever was doing this didn't intend for this to happen at all, and it was a completely unplanned for side effect, but nonetheless, it is causing a lot of trouble around Candlekeep, as when we get to the players, after we get a chance to introduce them and everything, they're going to be going through these books, and one of them will stumble across Mazfrot's Mighty Digressions, which is a book that is a Gingwatsit. So, a little background on the adventure itself. Excuse me. A little background on the adventure itself. The books are being forged by a group of Jackalwares whose Lamia master, their Lamia lord, was recently killed by a group of adventurers. These adventurers didn't know that this Lamia was an exception to the rule and was actually not evil. It just wanted to do its own thing and take care of its Jackalware tribe. And but the adventurers killed it nonetheless. And the Jackalwares are now trying to raise money to get enough to buy a diamond that they need to hire someone to do a restoration spell, a revivification spell, something to bring their Lamia back to life. So their intentions are good. Their intentions aren't malevolent, but the players don't know this to start. So this session starts with them finding one of the books that was forged by these Jackalwares. So yeah, they're in one of their library rooms. For my campaign, I'm having them already be slightly established with Candlekeep. They've done one job for them before. A few of them work together on this job. It's kind of my way of bringing in players that might have played the first level of this, the level 1 adventure, and I know a couple of my players have. So they already have a little bit of rapport with Candlekeep, and they're hanging out in their office, in their private study area, sorting through books that have been brought into Candlekeep when this Gingwatsit attacks. So, we have our session keys here that we were talking about. Players are in their private office. They can see across the way, I just tossed this little detail in there. There's a Furbolg man in a tower of infernal iron. Spikes coming out of it all over the place. It looks like a super metal tower. And there's this Furbolg making a nice little garden across the way that they can see. Maybe the smells drift over to them every now and then. I like contrasts like that. But yeah, so as the players go over the books, one of them finds a book that turns out to be a Gingwatsit. That's basically the gist of these first 3 notes here. As they finish up with that fight, it will be a fight. There's really no way to negotiate with this thing. It's starving and wants to eat the players. Um, as soon as the fight's wrapping up, one of their first NPCs that they're going to really interact with comes in, an avowed adjutant by the name of Sprig. Sprig's a great character. We'll go over her NPC details in a minute here, but yeah, she comes in and seems more annoyed than anything else. And another book, things like that. And then the players realize like, oh, this isn't the only one. And then the adjutant says, you know what, why don't you guys go ahead and look into this? You know, we needed to get this room cleaned up anyways, so why don't you guys go ahead and take a look into this? And then Sprig will tell them the information that she knows, and then tell them how to get more information from different people at Candlekeep. Two specific people that are actually people that brought in those forged books, those Ging Watson books, and are still in Candlekeep. So that'll lead them to that. That'll be a good while of RP and interaction, walking around the castle and everything. And yeah, so the players are going to learn that the source of the bad books is one single vendor in the wide of Baldur's Gate. Something with the name Dune in the title. So they got a lead. They know where to go. Takes 5 days travel to reach Baldur's Gate from Candlekeep, and on their way there, a highwayman who is a were-rat ends up attacking the group and trying to rob them. There's all kinds of contingencies in place. This rat is unlikely to actually try and kill. Is actually unlikely to actually kill the party, but if anything, he's more likely to knock them out and just try and take their stuff. But if he is reduced to a low HP, he will run. Or if his rats that are accompanying him are slain, he will run. He comes back in later, and it's just a nice way to get a villain like into the group, introduced to the group, and then have him come back later so they can be like, "Oh, you again." So yeah, nice little were-rat guy there, and then there's also, of course, always the threat of lycanthropy that a were-rat presents. So yeah, that's likely as far as my players are going to get. I have a couple more bullet points in case they do get farther, and I am, of course, ready to improv if they actually get into Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate's a fantastic city. There's an entire gazetteer for it in the back of Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus, and I've run that campaign a couple times now, so I'm very familiar with Baldur's Gate. Fully confident that I can improv once they get there, if they get that far. I even have a little encounter on Worm's Crossing, the bridge across the Chianthar River that leads to Baldur's Gate that they'll have to cross to get there, unless they plan on going for a swim. Notorious for pickpockets, really good opportunity to show them that outside of Baldur's Gate is not a nice place. So yeah, that's really as far as I expect them to get in this session. I have 6 players. I know we're going to spend a lot of time introducing characters. We're going to probably spend a good amount of time before they even realize that they're dealing with a Ging Watson in their study room. So it's about as far as I expect to get in session 1. And so moving on, we have our non-player characters. We have Sprig Summerfoot. She's an adjutant, an avowed, a lower level avowed who's in charge of keeping an eye on this floor that the players are currently working on. Then we have the other 2 important NPCs in this particular adventure. Valor, a very grumpy tiefling knight who brought a book into Candlekeep that was a Ging Watson, and she had already finished her stay, but then when they found out that the book was a fake, decided Valor was asked to stay and do some work for the keep to make up for the lost value of the book that wasn't added to their collection. So she can be found in a couple different places. During the day, she's re-shingling on the hearth, which is a great opportunity for the players to visit the hearth. During the evening, she's kind of just wandering around the courtyard, pacing around until she's too tired, and then she'll go to the local boarding house. And there's Yalarian High Scroll, much more upbeat guy. Real quick, I have, of course, my character archetypes. For Sprig Summerfoot, she's just a commoner. I'm going to base her personality a lot off of Merry and Pippin, kind of just like a combination of those 2 characters. Very, very just traditional hobbit, mischievous. And then we have Valor, who I'm basing off of Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. Just as soon as I read that character description in the book, that's just the image that popped into my head. And when I get things like that just immediately click, I just run with them. And then a perfect example for this next one, Yalarian High School reminded me of Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that's that character. He's the one that I'm going to be thinking about and channeling whenever I am trying to roleplay that character. He's a human acolyte, and Valor is a knight. The minor NPC section, we usually fill this out as we go in game. It's where, like, if I just have to randomly come up with an idea for a name, grab it from right there, and grab it from one of my random generator lists and drop the name right there in a quick description. I guess it's a good opportunity to show off the my bookmarks. I have the fantasy name generator bookmarked up there. It is a fantastic resource to use. I use it all the time. So let's show you that real quick. Get it open in a new tab. So the shrunk down version of this is actually the one that I use most often, but it basically lets me scroll down to this immediately, click on that, and then it gives me a drop down of all the different races. And this is what I have open in one of my tabs, just that image. And whenever I need an NPC, I can just okay, we need an elf. Got some elf names, okay. I like Sarkhan, I like Umaron, I like Elvin. It's easy. But yeah, things like that. You can do female names, Trisera, Yesra, Kaylin, things like that. Super easy. Always have random names on hand to get generated so you're not sitting around a name for too long, and then always have a good spot to drop those names in front of you so you can remember. Yeah, can't tell you how many times I just came up with an APC name off the top of my head before I started doing it this way, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, so and so, and they're like, is this a new person? I'm like, no, I just forgot the name. So this helps with that. Whenever notable locations. With a lot of modules, this isn't as important because they're so fleshed out for you already, but this one I'm making a little bit of an exception for since we're going to be doing a bit of homebrew. I really want them to be able to picture the things that we're getting into. So Baldur's Gate isn't detailed in the book very specifically, but I have some information here. I'm toying with the idea of maybe having this be occurring at the same time as a Descent into Avernus playthrough. What that means is that when they get to Baldur's Gate, the place would be overrun with refugees from Elturel. Maybe they see one of the encounters that happens. I'm still on the fence about that. I'm worried that they're going to try to dive too far into that as a storyline. If I do end up doing that, I'm going to be very careful to make sure that those things are happening off in the distance and that it's not something that they seem to need to be directly involved with. If they try to get involved, I'll try to disconnect them from that as quickly as I can. But just a thought, just a potential idea, since some of the players were interested in Baldur's Gate and Descent into Avernus. Might be a good setup for a future campaign. So yeah, just some information on Baldur's Gate and everything like that. And the reason Candlekeep is below that is because I am constantly going to be referring back to this section to that part of Candlekeep and adding to it as the game goes on, and then I'll add the session by session ones above it. So yeah, Candlekeep. When I do my session introduction, after I do my first little exposition dump, I'm going to go into a description of what they would know about Candlekeep, go over the details of the different locations, and specify some of those locations, like the Court of Air. You know, they're going to be spending a lot of time there, and then the Pillars of Pedagogy. That's important for today's session because that's where they'll be when they start the game. I'll describe the Emerald Dorn, how that is important to Candlekeep itself, how people have to present the books there to get in. Other places are going to be the Hearth. The Hearth is likely going to be gone into in a little bit more detail. Talking about how it's full of extra dimensional spaces that can be rented out for private rooms and many shrines to various gods that are of prominence in Candlekeep are also in these extra dimensional spaces inside of the Hearth. There's the House of Rest, which is pretty much what it sounds like, but again, the players will be spending a lot of time there. If they do any resting up until a certain point in the campaign, that's where it'll be. So yeah, just detailing some of the more important places that they'll be visiting during this campaign or during this session. Yeah, then we have our relevant stat blocks. Again, I don't plan on them getting into a whole lot of combats. I'm thinking it's just going to be the two, but if not, I have a third one prepared just in case they get a little trigger happy. But we have our relevant stat blocks, the King Watson, the Were Rat, and the Giant Rats. The items and rewards for this one is going to be a little bit fluid because this is the one, the Helm of Telepathy is what's in the book, but as I play with the characters and as I run the game for the characters, I'm going to take a look at what kind of things I feel like they really want, and I might substitute that out for something more directly useful to the party. Campaign map section is blank because the way that Candlekeep is set up, I'm going to kind of develop the overarching themes as I go. I have a couple ideas in the back of my head. My partner helped me come up with one where a lot of the different characters have specific things that they're trying to find out. Maybe one of the rarer books regarding those subjects is missing, and the Avowed don't know why. It's missing from one of the sections that things are not supposed to go missing from. It's supposed to be lots of different magical things there, so that could launch into its own investigation that they do between these written adventures. But just ideas like that. Again, this is the first session, so I'm really going to gauge what kind of things my party is going to be interested in based off of this session, and then start building the campaign arching story from there. The note section at the bottom is filled out mid-game, and yeah, this is the document that I use for everything. For the next document, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one, store the old one, and then make my notes on the next one and retitle it as Session 2. But yeah, so that's really it. That's the session prep for the game. This took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do that, including populating the different maps that are going to be necessary, like the private study room with the game wants it. There's Sprig down there in the bottom left corner. There's a road encounter for when they meet with the were rat, and then of course we have some further down the line for if they get a little bit farther than that. But this is as far as we're expecting to get today. So yeah, this video was a bit longer. Session 1 videos are always going to be a bit longer, but I thank you very much for watching this. So yeah, my Patreon is going to be filled with different videos like this. I'm going to try to do, for each new game that I start, I'm going to start a new series like this, where I break down my prep process for you in a quick video, and then afterwards, we'll talk about what actually happened and what I was expecting to happen compared to what actually happened. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Check out the Patreon, subscribe if this is something that you're going to be super interested in, and yeah, we'll see you next time.